back to StabilityWOD. I wanted to talk about the abs again today, but revisit them in what I consider a global approach. So the first conversations we had were more about how do we tune into the right muscles, how do we get them engaged, get them online, how do we connect our pelvic floor to our deep abs. I want to take that and I want to put it into a more traditional core stability approach. And before I do that, I want to share a case example. I saw a client recently who came to see me for back pain, and he had a spondylolisthesis. Try to spell that. It's when one vertebrae shifts forward relative to another vertebrae. It's a relatively common structural pattern that happens when people do a lot of hyperextension. Gymnastics, football, there are different sports that people grow up playing where they can develop this. Anyway, he had it for a long time. As we were going through the evaluation, it also came up as an afterthought that he'd had a history of plantar fasciitis. And one of the most common pre-existing conditions that I see in people with plantar fasciitis are lumbar problems, whether it's a disc, an injury, a spondylolisthesis, some type of history of sciatica for whatever reason. Those people tend to be more prone to plantar fasciitis. In the process of treating his back, he was noticing all this connection with his foot. As I was needling it, as I was mobilizing his sciatic nerve, he was seeing how treating his low back was directly affecting some of his old symptoms in his foot. He could feel that connection. There are some people for whom their foot pain doesn't get better until they start getting more stability, more strength around their lumbar spine. And this is sometimes a stretch to understand, but it's just sometimes amazing that you're doing all these manual therapies, stretching the calves, mobilizing the feet, and we've been talking about feet the last few weeks, so I thought this was a nice connection to help you understand that sometimes foot problems won't get better until we have more stability, not just in our feet and our hips, but also in our low back. Now, lumbar core stability is something that I've worked a lot with over time, and I've really changed my relationship with it. I no longer like to use it as something that people do ongoing. I think it's a means to an end, and I like to use it as a way to help people tune in to what's going on in that part of their body, to develop more awareness, to learn how to bring intention to those muscles with higher level movements that put more torque on the back, movements that are just more intense. And then I like to encourage them to carry that forward into whatever type of exercise they're doing, whether it's running or CrossFit or golf. Once they get the awareness from doing core stability exercises, they carry it forward. Core stability exercises might bring with them some strength gains, but in my opinion, that's not really the point. The point is to take whatever strength gains you get, but more importantly, the awareness that you get, and take that back onto the playing field. So I'm going to share with you a very basic core stability exercise that's more of a global stability exercise, meaning that we're integrating all the muscles into one powerful movement, not just the deep muscles, but we're combining all of them. I said free. All right, you guys, now I'm not wearing this shirt because I'm going out to the disco tonight, although I do love disco. I'm wearing this because I wanted you to be able to see what's happening to my abs as I'm doing some basic core stability exercises. So this is the basic exercise that probably many of you have tried in the past. Okay, you're just doing a bicycle. The weight of your legs becomes the challenge. It's producing a torque on your back that tends to want to pull you into extension if you don't know how to control it. So it's actually a relatively high level exercise that I think is very good at challenging people in a functional way that carries over well to walking, running, bicycling, you name it. You've also probably all seen people at the gym that have this strategy where they put their hands underneath their hips and they do 100 of these and they're just going nuts. And not only does this not really do anything for your abs, it works your hip flexors and your quads like crazy because they become the prime movers. They get very short and tight, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the exercise. The variation of this is sort of the dead bug where you do opposite arm and leg, which is also a great variation that simulates function very well because walking is an opposite kind of movement where the opposite arm and the leg flex at the same time. It's a great variation, assuming you can control the abs. Coming back to our prior conversation about how do we start this exercise, if you remember, my friend Andrea
or Dre, we talked about how to cue the pelvic floor first, how to draw in the deep transverse abdominis second, and then how to reinforce that by drawing the ribs down so that all the abs are drawn in. And I like to talk about this in the context of let's train our abs the way we want them to look, which is tight and drawn in. If you're walking on the beach, that's the aesthetic that you want, right? Now, a lot of people, when I first ask them to do this, not only do they initially go into hyperextension when their leg extends, but they also get this distended look where their belly comes out. Some people have a ridge, some people have a split in the middle. It doesn't mean you can't do this. You can still do 100 of these, and you could be in your core class just repping this out, doing arms and legs. But look at all this daylight under my back, and look at how distended my abs are. So my experience with this with clients is that they first need to learn how to stabilize, engage the pelvic floor, engage the deep abs, draw everything in so that this is tight to the point where you could take a punch, you could drop a medicine ball from the ceiling and it would bounce right off. This is like super rigid, indestructible, as though you were doing a deadlift. This gets back to the 10 out of 10 tension that I've talked about in the past, where you're trying to engage your ab muscles to the point where they're 10 out of 10 rigid as you're doing this. What that does is it stabilizes your back in neutral, and sometimes I'll even encourage people that are really archy to hedge into a little bit of flexion so that they have the feedback from the floor from a hand. Once they get the feeling of that, I'll have them pick a leg up. Now, a lot of people can start this way, they're good. As soon as they start to straighten the leg, the abs start to bulge out and they lose it. So I cue them and I say, hey, draw this in, bring this back down. We're going to learn to move our hip without moving our back. We're going to disassociate the two body parts. So the hip can learn to move like it would when you were running or walking without your back even getting involved. The back stays stable, the back stays neutral, and for a lot of people, initially, this is a brain exercise. This is not a strength problem. They don't have a weak core. They have the inability for their brain to communicate with their abs in a way where they can actually do this while their hips are doing such a torquey, complex movement. At some point, this clicks for people, and suddenly they can feel the difference between doing this way, distended out, and doing it this way, drawn in, tight. I'm training my abs the way they want me to look, the way I want them to look. I get thinner, I'm drawn in, I'm tight. Someone could punch me, and there's no effect. My back is stable, it's still, it's rigid, and my legs are doing their thing. Now, I can do about 20 of these, and I shouldn't really be talking right now, but I can do about 20 of these before I start to actually feel fatigue in my abs. If you feel tightness in your back, if you feel tightness in your hip flexors, you're not using the right muscle. The abs are the priority in this exercise. Everything else is just things you do to make the abs work harder. So don't focus on the legs, don't focus on anything, but taking your abs from distended, back archy, to pelvic floor drawn up, transverse abdominis drawn in, everything else, rectus abdominis, obliques, as we talked about a few weeks ago, reinforce that. You get to the point where you're neutral, if not a little bit flexed, especially for those of you who tend towards being archy in your backs where you have a lot of daylight underneath here. Draw that down, hedge into flexion a little bit, and then I want you to practice doing slow repetitions until you get to the point where you can control this. Now, I said I shouldn't be talking. There are plenty of people on YouTube and other avenues who are talking through their whole 10-minute ab routine. If you're able to talk, you're not focusing on drawing in your abdominals to the point where they're tense, and also focusing on your breathing at the same time. I like to exhale as I extend. It helps me draw my abs in, helps me maintain a little bit of flexion in my low back to stabilize my back, and then I'll inhale as I come up. In, out. Notice I'm also monitoring my abs because a lot of people get to rep 3 or 4 or 8 and they start to go from, okay, I got this, to I'm getting tired, I can't really feel it anymore, and then here they are again, okay? And then it just becomes kind of a waste of time. So again, the whole purpose of this is to learn how to do this well. I'm going to show you one quick scale, and the scale is just a heel tap. We decrease the length of the lever arm, we decrease the torque on the back, and we learn how to move those hips in a slightly smaller range of movement with a really drawn-in solid core. I'm focused on this every rep. I'm checking in, I'm resetting. If I start to lose it, I reset it. Oh, maybe I do 5 reps and I'm like, that's all I can do, I'm done. I need to take a break, I need to reset, refine my pelvic floor, deep abs, superficial abs, and then I go again. Now remember, this has nothing to do with your strength. This is not to make you stronger. This is to make you more aware of what your abs are doing when you're actually doing real movement, playing real sports. So I want you to use it in that context. Once it clicks, you really feel this, and you can get up to doing 10 reps per leg with really good control. That's when it's time to add a second set or do some more advanced work. What I don't want you doing is pinning your pelvis and doing 100 double leg lifts only to find that your abs aren't really doing that much work, but your hip flexors are crazy. So use this appropriately. I'd love some feedback on what you feel. This is very hard to teach even in the clinic. So ask me questions and practice it a little bit until you feel like you really get the feel for what I'm talking about. Go back and review my initial videos about the core cylinder and about how to engage the deep abdominals because that sets the foundation for you to have success with these higher level core exercises. It also carries into just about any other core exercise you do, whether it's Pilates, yoga, ab class, you name it. This is the important stuff.
So what I want you to take away in practicing this core exercise is not that it's going to make your core stronger so that your back is more safe. What I want you to take away is the idea that by doing these exercises, you're going to gain awareness using a lot of intention around how it feels to have tension around this part of your body that you can take into your everyday life, from lifting up kids to playing sports. That's the value, I think, of doing core stability exercises. There are lots of ways to do this. Yoga, Pilates, ab blast, you name it. There are so many YouTube videos about how to strengthen your core. And while I think that these movements are valuable and they can bring more strength, the idea is that they're a means to an end. You learn how to do it, you become very intentional about how you wrap that into your movement, and the value is what you do with it thereafter. Thanks for tuning in to StabilityWOD today. I'm grateful to be able to share with you. Please take a second to subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.